Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
This is Access to Democracy. Welcome to the program and thank you for joining us today. I'm Bill Raker, your host. Today's theme is protecting Eagan's water resources. And here to talk with us about what that job entails and how she does it is the Water Resources Manager for the City of Eagan, Jenna Olson. Jenna, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to what you're going to be sharing with our viewers today. When I first met you a few months ago, it was at one of the meetings of Sustainability Academy that Eagan has going on. And I thought you would be a wonderful guest to have come talk to our viewers. So Jenna, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into the role of Water Resources Manager.
Yeah, I think I ask myself that question often. How did I get here? So I'm full disclosure, not a Minnesota native. I was born and raised in Massachusetts on the East Coast, around the ocean, and I've always really been drawn to the water. And so I decided to go to school for environmental science and earn my bachelor's and then a master's degree in Vermont. My master's is in environmental law and policy. From there, I got a job working for the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, working in the regulatory realm, doing a lot of litigation type work. So permitting and oversight, regulatory oversight, and ended up doing a lot of work in expert witness testimony and testifying at the legislature, and decided I wanted to move more into the community level and implementing environmental regulations sort of at the city scale. So from there, I got a job working for the city of Burlington, Vermont, where there are still combined sewers. So that means that stormwater and wastewater go into the same pipe. And especially in a changing climate, there is often not enough room for both, which means they overflow, and that's a problem.
That's not good, is it?
No. But yeah, in 2019, my first child was born, and my husband, who is a Minnesota native, and I decided shortly thereafter, after our second child came along in 2021, that we wanted to move west and be closer to his parents here. And when this position cropped up, I felt really well poised to take on this role with Eagan. And so I've been here almost 2 years now, And it's really been a great experience so far.
Well, we're going to ask you to share some of those experiences with us, Jenna. Interesting history of how you got involved with this kind of a career, and then how you got to Minnesota. But we're delighted that you're here. We're very pleased that you're working with the City of Eagan. So we're anxious to hear what your role is, what kind of responsibilities you have, from the mundane to the strategic to the really, really big stuff. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I get to oversee a really incredible group of people. So I am the smallest program within the Department of Public Works. So I think a few months back you interviewed my director, Russ Mathis.
I did, yes.
So we are nested within the Department of Public Works. And like I said, we're the smallest program. There's 4 full-time staff, including myself. But just a really incredible group of scientific professionals overseeing just over 1,200 lakes, ponds, and wetlands across the city. So our focus, versus the other departments, is really on surface water quality. So, the big lakes, ponds, and wetlands that you can see on the surface. We don't really delve into groundwater or drinking water or anything like that. That's really our utilities department. And, the day-to-day work can really vary. So again, my team is often doing the kind of nitty-gritty on-the-ground work, and I'm doing more of the overarching strategic planning. I like to consider myself their hype man. So I'm just kind of pumping them up and making sure everybody's moving in the right direction. But we take on a huge number of tasks within the city. So on the regulatory side, we are ensuring that the city is in compliance with state and federal water quality regulations. So, everything from the municipal separate storm sewer permit, or the MS4, to other water quality regulations, but also implementing city ordinances related to water quality. So there are several sections of city ordinance that required new and redevelopment projects to implement different measures on the ground to improve and protect water quality. We also do a lot of kind of semi-recreation type work. So we have a really robust fisheries program. Every year, our staff are monitoring water quality in a cross-section of lakes across the city, and then also monitoring fish populations, conducting fish surveys, and we're doing stocking. So we're actually stocking a lot of the lakes with fish based on the results of those surveys.
Well,
it's a
this
wide
is fascinating. Yes, it really is a broad scope of what your work involves. You've mentioned a couple of things that I want to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah.
When you talk about making sure that the City of Eagan is in compliance with environmental regulations that apply to it, especially as it deals with water, aren't you really after the citizens who live here and the people who work here and the businesses who are housed here, that they're in compliance with these environmental regulations?
Yeah, essentially, yes. So the city has its own set of regulations that we have to adhere to under the MS4 permit. So there are things like, there are a bunch of what they call minimum control measures. So good housekeeping, which includes things like street sweeping and cleaning catch basins and things like that. And then it goes as broad as, conducting appropriate public outreach and education to engage with citizens. Now, there are also more robust components like pre- and post-construction stormwater management. So that's where sort of development comes in. Anytime somebody's doing a construction project or building a new building, part of that permit requirement is it's our responsibility to ensure that they're not having a negative impact on water quality during the construction process. So, while everything's torn up and there's nothing stabilizing the site, it's just kind of a dirt pit. And then after the site is built and everything's paved over and water can't infiltrate into the ground anymore, making sure that they have appropriate measures in place to filter the stormwater runoff before it discharges to a water body.
Sure. And you mentioned that, and I think it's an important clarification, that your area of responsibility is not groundwater or drinking water. That's a completely separate responsibility that you don't have. But you also mentioned that there are 1,200 bodies of water, I'll use that general term, just within the city of Eagan?
Yeah.
Well, you elaborate on that. I can't envision. I mean, I know Eagan is a pretty big city. What, 68 square miles or something like that, I guess?
Yeah. Yes. Eagan, yes, there is a lot of water. 1,200 water bodies is a significant number of water bodies. And in a lot of cases, those are constructed systems, and we don't always know that. So, we have historic mapping and kind of aerial imagery from as far back as, I think, 1934, sometime in the 1930s. And we're using that as a historical point of reference to figure out at any given time, okay, yes, this particular water body has been there this whole time, or no, somebody probably built that, somewhere along the line. But either way, a lot of those systems, even when they're constructed, have over time turned into natural systems where they're providing habitat, in many cases have fish present and are providing some level of an ecosystem service. And so we're still responsible for managing those.
So talk about fishing. If someone fishes in one of these 1,200 bodies of water that you have responsibility for, and they catch a nice big fat healthy fish that's edible, they can thank you that water was able to sustain that kind of fishing?
Yes. Well, they can thank my team. So, like I said, I've only been here 2 years. So the folks, again, that I oversee have really been intimately involved with a lot of the water quality improvements we've seen over the last 2 decades. But yes, our fisheries and most of our water quality is thriving. So the water quality here in Eagan is excellent overall.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I know we're glad to hear that. So what you do really has long-term vision and strategy involved in it, because maintaining healthy water is not just something that happens overnight, and it isn't something that once you've achieved it, it stays stable forever. It's an ongoing kind of issue that you need to deal with, right?
Yeah, managing water resources, especially in this day and age, it's very much an adaptive process. So, our climate is changing, and often we're kind of trying to evolve with different goals as they arise. A good example is last winter, we really didn't have any snow or substantial ice cover. And what that meant is that the plants that normally go dormant over the winter were continuing to photosynthesize throughout the entire season. And this summer, we saw a huge influx in lake plants all across the city. As a result, we had to spend more time on harvesting and hiring contractors to come in and address that plant growth. We were able to do that, and thankfully, again, we have the resources and the staff with the expertise to know what all of that means. But it certainly is a moving target, and in any given season, it does require us to pivot at times. So.
Well, that keeps you challenged.
Yes.
What are some of the major challenges that you might have experienced this season, or that you might experience over a longer period of time?
Yeah. Again, I think climate change and adapting to adapting to the demands of climate change have been one of the biggest challenges thus far in my career. Aside from the individual biological impacts that those changes have on fish and other wildlife and on water chemistry itself, there's also a lot of issues associated with stormwater infrastructure. So climate change has led to a much higher frequency of short duration, high intensity storm events. Mm-hmm. So, those flashy little summer storms that, we've grown accustomed to over the years, excuse me, are happening with a much higher frequency now. So, earlier this spring was a good example where you saw, it seemed like every week we were getting multiple storms where it was dropping, half to a full inch of water over 15, 20 minutes. When you have so much paved surface or impervious surface, the water doesn't have anywhere to go. And what that leads to is a lot of localized flooding, but also a huge amount of pollutant loading. So as that water runs off of those surfaces, it's taking everything that's on that surface with it. And that's, sediment and all of the nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen that's bound to that, hydrocarbons, anything that's kind of falling or dusting off of cars, things like that. And so we're dealing with a huge influx in volume and also a big influx in pollutant load. On the flip side of that, as I was saying with the plant situation, it also led to much higher water levels in a lot of our lakes and ponds, which meant that we were able to access some areas easier to manage plants and remove some of that biomass. So, it's a constant evaluation process of where are we, what is going on in this moment, what do we need to do to adapt to today's challenge. And again, I'm very lucky that I have the team I do because they're like a very talented group of scientists who are able to look at all of those different parameters and pivot at any given time.
Well, I think, Jenna, you've identified some consequences of the kind of climate that we've been experiencing here that the average person doesn't think of or may not even be aware of. I mean, I see the rain falling around my house and I see what's happening to it, but I don't think about what all that water is taking into the runoff system with it. Yeah. So that is a challenge. That is a challenge. How frequently now are you having to rethink or recalibrate your plans and your projects based upon what maybe is a one-time occurrence, like all of the rain we had earlier this year, or maybe it's not? I mean, maybe these effects of climate change are going to be ongoing and maybe unpredictable.
Yeah. We try really hard to forecast out as far as we can, while keeping our strategies as scientifically based as possible. So, in a lot of cases, the impacts of a changing climate, and I think that's what makes it so challenging, is that it is very, very unpredictable. And so, again, we have years where, we're going through several years in a row of severe drought, and then all of a sudden we get hit, like in the spring of this year, with just a record amount of rainfall. It pulls us out of the drought condition, but also brings with it a whole other set of issues. Part of the other challenge, and I guess to some degree the opportunity here, is that in many cases, the impacts of that spring rainfall, or for example, isn't something that we're going to see in our data for several months out, in some cases even a year or two out. So, the pollutants enter the waterway. In a lot of cases, they're bound to sediment, or they're somehow, bound in the water column or at the bottom of a lake. and then over time become resuspended, and that's when we start to see those spikes in nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, spikes in things like chlorophyll A, a decrease in clarity, things like that. So it's really, making note at a specific point in time of something that's going on, or something that's happening, recording that rainfall, making note, making those observations, and then ensuring that as we proceed through the coming months and the coming years, in some cases, that we're utilizing that information to figure out how to fix it, or how to adjust to it, or whatever we need to do.
Well, you're giving us a really good description and explanation about what your role involves and the complexity of it, as we noted early on. Can we bring this down a little bit, Jenna, and talk about all of these things that you oversee, all of these things that you overdo? And when I say you, I'm talking about your staff as well. Tell us some more about how the citizens of Eagan benefit directly from what it is that you do, and why it's important for them to know and appreciate what you do.
Yeah, access to healthy, thriving blue spaces is a fundamental public right, and I personally feel like it's really important for folks to have access to healthy, clean blue spaces. There is a significant amount of data out there that demonstrates the health benefits of having access to green and blue spaces, especially following the COVID pandemic. We saw firsthand how important it was to have access to those types of recreational resources. And so that is really important to me, is ensuring that this community is not only familiar with all of the incredible water bodies that exist in Eagan, but that they have, ongoing, recreational access to those areas and are able to appreciate and enjoy them. That it's also really critical that those resources are free.
Well, that's a good point. You all right?
Yeah, there's a real socioeconomic component to this too. This is another reason why I got into this. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, and so I wasn't going to the fancy summer camps. A lot of the time in the summer, I was, appreciating the free resources in local lakes and ponds around the area, or marshes in my case. Because that's what we had, and that's what we had access to. And I think that that's really important too, is for a community, for everybody in a community to have access to those areas.
Maybe we need to clarify just a little bit. When you said the access to these benefits is free, it really means that they don't have to pay any fees or surcharges or anything like that,
right,
to take advantage of them.
Right.
But these programs are funded by our tax dollars that we pay to the city, right?
Well, they're actually funded through the utility bill. So my program is actually funded on the water and sewer utility bill. So there's
an item on the utility bill that...
Yeah, there's a storm drainage charge on the utility bill, and that is based on the type of property. So there's single family, duplex, triplex, and a couple of different categories for commercial properties. And then it's further based on the amount of impervious surface on that lot. So those fees are actually what fund our program. Yeah.
And do you have some idea of the budget that's involved for this? Yeah,
so we actually have two separate budgets. So our annual operating budget is right around $3 million a year. That includes, again, 4 full-time employees and then 3 seasonal staff as well. So we have 3 summer interns, typically from early May through the end of August. And then all of our standard operational expenses, so any of the standard daily business expenses that you'd have for any program. But on the other side, we also have a capital budget. So whereas, again, as part of the Department of Public Works, we operate on a 5-year capital improvement plan cycle. And each year, usually in January, all of the divisions sort of get together and we talk through what projects and priorities we have for the coming 5-year cycle. We make sure that we're coordinated between programs, so there's a lot of adjustment and moving and, okay, do we need to do this here? Do we need to do we need to push it out a couple of years? Making sure that timing is aligned at certain locations. So, if engineering has a project that they wanted to complete, streets and fleet, utilities even, so that we're not accessing the same location multiple times and disrupting that area of the community. And so that we go through that entire process and then ultimately bring that to finance. Our financial department tells us, okay, yes, these numbers work based on what we're projecting for revenue for that year, and then City Council will approve it. So, and that can vary pretty greatly from anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on what we have to do in a given year.
Do you have any plans or projects that are on the drawing board that you can share with us that, they're far enough along that you can talk about them, but they haven't been implemented yet?
Yeah, one project I'm really excited about, and this is actually going to be mostly funded through a grant that we received from the Department of Natural Resources, is a new fishing pier on LeMay Lake. So we have been coordinating with our own Parks and Recreation Department and the staff that we regularly coordinate with at DNR in their shore fishing program and their fishing in the neighborhood program, and had identified that we would really love to put a fishing pier over at LeMay Lake. Moonshine Park is kind of an unsung hero in the city. It's a beautiful lake. It has a ton of fish. But it's in an area of the city that's a little bit more commercialized, and so folks don't often know it's there. So we're really excited to hopefully be putting a fishing pier there in the coming year.
So like 2025?
Yes. Yep. That's the goal.
Well, we're looking forward to that. There will be a ribbon cutting, I suppose, when you open it up for the fishermen and fisherwomen to come in and take advantage of that.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, Jenna, we have a minute or so left in the program. Anything you'd like to leave our viewers with or share with us about your program and what you do to keep the water safe and usable here at Eagan?
Yeah, I just thank you again for having me. It really is, it's an honor to serve this community. We have such an engaged citizenry here in Eagan, and just such a talented group of staff. It's really a pleasure to come to work every day and be able to enjoy this community and all it has to offer, and the incredibly talented folks that I get to work with. So.
Well, it's been our delight to have you on Access to Democracy, Jenna. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you and your staff, your team do here in the City of Eagan. We really appreciate it. And good luck to you and good success as you continue.
Thanks, Bill.